As some of you know well, with this kind of practice, it's more helpful to do it for short periods of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then have a break and do it again. Because it's not something you can do with effort. After lunch, there's some free time, and you can go out and walk in the woods. And just, without controlling anything, be aware that if your mind is identifying what it sees or making a judgment about how the fields are, even if it's quite a tight formation which arises, allow it just to be there. You don't like what the farmer's doing, or you think it's beautiful, it's a judgment. And if you don't do anything with it, although it's already cooked up a little bit, it dissolves. It dissolves. So instead of having to correct your mind or develop your mind, the mind cleans itself. The mind is always refreshing itself because it doesn't stand in relation to the thought. In Dzogchen texts, they talk a lot about kada, primordial purity. Something is made impure when it's brought into contact with something else and it gets marked or stained. But awareness doesn't stand in relation to anything. Awareness is not a thing. You can have a biscuit and a coffee, and you put the biscuit in the coffee and it starts to dissolve. They are interacting in a way that leaves a mark on each. But awareness is not touched, just as the mirror is not made horrible or bad if you put some ugly thing in front of it. The reflection that fills the mirror doesn't contaminate the mirror. Therefore, you don't need to worry about cleaning the mirror, because the mirror is not having a trauma. It's not soiled or sullied. In the same way, your awareness is filling with this particular image externally or this strong judgment internally, and then it goes. What is left? If you're open, nothing is left. If you hook that thought, if you go after that thought, then you start to build up a patterning of thought, and that's what's left, a trace or a smear. So if you wanted to clean the windows and you just pick up a cloth from the kitchen and you start on it, and suddenly you realize, oh, I was washing the frying pan with this, and some fat has now gone all over the window. It's like that. When you try to clean with a consciousness that's not clean, you get smearing, and the mind gets more opaque. So, whatever arises, let it be and it will go. The primordial purity of the mind is not improved by good objects, nor is it harmed or damaged or made impure by bad objects. This is the fundamental freedom that we have, that the mind is vajra or dorje, indestructible. But consciousness is not. Consciousness is very fragile and very feeble and easily affected. So when we see something horrible, we get a shock. I remember walking down a little path, I saw a little dead, tiny country mouse. And I looked down at it, and suddenly it started moving. Oh! And it was full of maggots, and they were wriggling around inside it. I thought, ah! Ooh. This is the ego. But then if you let that go, the ego's gone. The ego is the continuation of commentary and involved thought construction, interpretation construction. Everything is there. The dead creature lying on the path is not has no power to control me. It's my thought about it, my sense of the something disturbing in this, some sudden unheimlich, some sudden, oi, what is that? That gets to me. But that's my mind, it's not the mouse. It's my sense of, I know what's what. Now this, is it dead, is it alive? That kind of uncanny on the borderline, that's what gets us shaken up. But that's the structure of my interpretive framework. So, when we go to lunch and you're queuing and then eating or maybe cleaning and then you go out, whatever is occurring, whether you're walking or talking or sitting, whether you're on your own or with other people, don't try to block the movement, don't try to control the movement, but just be present with the movement, not observing from a distance, but observing how this person talking to me is in my field of experience, and my body and my feelings and thoughts are in my field of experience as well. So the object or the other and self are arising together. They are co-emergent in the undivided field of clarity. When I start thinking about the other person, I'm shrinking into myself and seeing the other as different. But actually we're both emerging in the same luminous field, just arising and changing and patterning, arising, changing and patterning. So we always have this choice. The door is always open. Even if your mind's dull, you're walking down the country path and you're caught up thinking about something, you do that for 15 minutes. And when you wake up from that, the trees are here, the birds are singing, it's fresh. That has all gone. Stay with the fresh. Oh, why did I get so lost? Why did now you're off on another little journey. So always, if you trust and relax, the fresh is always available. And then you start to see, as the texts say, the clouds are in the sky. If I'm here on the earth and it's a cloudy day, I just see a big mass of grey clouds. I imagine maybe there's a blue sky beyond, but I don't see it. So I say the clouds are obscuring the sky. Because I have a fantasy that the sky is blue and bright and shiny. The kind of sky you get in Greece. That's the proper sky. So it's like when you look at these statues of the Buddha, they're all smiling. These are the proper Buddhas. They're not easily available except in statues. Ordinary Buddhas are a bit more grumpy. So when you see the cloud is in the sky. The cloud emerges from the sky. The cloud is an aspect of the sky. When the sky is not obscured to itself by the cloud, the sky seems obscured by the cloud to me because I am outside the sky, because I'm me. When we relax, the mind, open awareness is like the sky. Now I am the sky on a very cloudy day. So I'm full of clouds. Some are very dark, sometimes there's storms, but I'm the sky. The clouds are moving in the sky. Where else would they move? You don't buy clouds in the shops, you don't find them in your freezer, you don't open a book and a cloud comes out. Clouds are always in the sky. Thoughts are always in the mind. The mind is empty. Thoughts and the mind are non-dual. Feelings and the mind are non-dual. Regret, self-hatred, guilt, these are all non-dual with the mind itself. Oh, but I don't like them. They're not good. Now you're out of the sky. You're out of the mirror. You're standing in your own little territory thinking, shit, I'm not doing very well and I'm getting older and I can't be bothered. And why? Boring story. Where's the sky? The sky is here. We come back to the sky, come back to the mirror. So this is always the choice. It's not far away. The clouds, the depression, the hopelessness, the self-hatred, this cloud is in the sky. Without the sky, you wouldn't have a cloud. This is why the wholeness, the Dzogchen, the great completion, has never been lost, because we are lost in the realm of the Buddha. We are lost in the mind of the Buddha. So, in the teaching example, they say, if somebody is asleep, they're lying in bed, and they have a nightmare, and they are disturbed and upset, and the Buddha comes along and he says, "Oh, sweet one, wake up." And they wake up, and safe in the bed. Because they were always in the bed. It's always in the open sky. But when you're in the cloud, when you're in the nightmare, you imagine you're somewhere else. This is the delusion of our interpretation. But the interpretation smears the world, covers the world, and intensifies the sense of separation and isolation within the ever-open sky. This is why awakening is possible. Because if there were two domains, if there was heaven somewhere up there and earth down here, how would you get from earth to heaven? If you climb up Jacob's ladder, there's always a few rungs missing and you can't get up. You can't go from here to there, because if you're here, there is not here, by definition. As soon as you're here, you've excluded there. There is made by here being here. But if you're not here, if you're relaxed and open, there and here are together, co-emergent. So there's nowhere else to go. There's nothing to be removed and nothing to be gained. So this is the heart of the Dzogchen teaching, and it's very, very practical. Because moment by moment, we can be in the sky or in the cloud. There's only two choices. But the cloud is always in the sky. So we're either aware of where we are, or we're dreaming about being a cloud. But where are you when you're dreaming about the cloud? You're in the sky as the sky. So this is the meaning of non-duality. It's never split, never separated. Oh, we start just with a little sitting, as before. Just relaxing and opening awareness to the field within which everything is emerging. We'll start to look at the text, and this text is from Padmasambhava, who, as many of you will know, was the great yogi who brought Tantra and aspects of Dzogchen to Tibet. He's credited with many writings which have come through as terma. And this text is from the Sangha Lamrim, the graded stages of the secret Tantra path or mantra path. And it's a very precise account of the open nature of the mind and how this becomes obscured. In Tibetan it's very dense and it's in very technical language, so I'll unpack it. But the advantage of looking at traditional text is that this is what has been studied for over 1,000 years. It's deeply meaningful and very precise. This particular extract from the larger text was recited every day in the daily practice, the Church, in my teacher's monastery in Tibet. It was something that all the monks were very familiar with. In the first part, which is here translated as the natural way, is in Tibetan it's ne luk. Ne means to stay, and luk means the mode or the style. So it's the style or the way of abiding, like how it is. How it is before it's changed in any way. So it's, if you like, the authentic or intrinsic or unadulterated way of being. And of course it's always referring to the mind, because the mind is chief. All Buddhism is concerned with the mind. Mind here, of course, is not just a rational thinking function. Mind is everything. People say, oh, we shouldn't just focus on the mind, we should focus on the body. But without the mind, you wouldn't have a body, because your body is an experience. The body is an experience within the mind. There is no division of mind and body. There is no division anywhere if you find the mind. So, he begins in a very dense way, and then he does his own commentary. He says that how our mind is, or how we are, or who we actually are, is non-dual, effortlessly arising, pure from the very beginning, and primordial Buddhahood. So these are four aspects of understanding what it means to be present. So, firstly, the natural way abides in non-duality. And there are 5 aspects to this. And hopefully by the time we've gone through these 5, you understand precisely what non-duality means. It's a term which becomes very popular nowadays. Many people are teaching forms of non-duality. Hindu traditional Advaita teachings on non-duality and Buddhist ones are not very different. But usually the Buddhist one is presented in a way that's actually many of the technical terms that they use to describe it are the same. So he says, firstly, whatever appears is without any actual reality whatsoever. Therefore, the essence is the non-duality of appearance and emptiness. So this is pointing to the importance that we find in the very first teaching of the Buddha, the first turning of the wheel that he did in the deer park, when he said there are these 3 marks of conditioned existence. There is suffering, which we know, and there is impermanence, which we can observe all the time and see in our dynamic experience, and there is the absence of inherent existence. This formulation in English is, in Tibetan it's dogme, or in Sanskrit it's Pudgala Anatmadrishti, and then Dharma Anatmadrishti, which means that dharmas, which includes Pudgala, which means people, all dharmas, all phenomena, are devoid of any inherent ego or self or essence or internal definition. So the absence of inherent existence means that phenomena don't exist from the inside out, that the existence of phenomena is always relational. So, for example, in my hand I have these reading glasses. So these are very common features of our world. We see people putting glasses on and off all the time. These are glasses. They are composed of different factors. They have two legs and one main frame, which is holding the glass in place. They arise due to the developments of international trade, because for sure these are made in China since they were very cheap. And they're developed through technology and made available in the shop, so you can buy them anywhere because you tend to lose them and the legs fall off. Now you could say, well, the history of the development of glasses belongs in history. It's got nothing to do with these glasses. But without the history of the development of the glass, of these early opticians finding out how to grind glass and looking at concave and convex and so on, and seeing magnification and coming to standard formulation of strengths of reading glasses, without all that background, these wouldn't be in existence. So there is an invisible history that, if on one level you could say these glasses are on the top of a whole pyramid of experiments and investigations. But actually that pyramid is inside the glasses. It's inseparable from it, because if that history wouldn't be there, these wouldn't be there. So they appear to be existing as just glasses, but they exist because of their history, and because of the people who made them, and because of the development of plastic. Glasses used to be very, very expensive, and now they're very, very cheap due to mass production. So changes in modern technology make easy availability for things like this. Also, you will notice that these glasses are in my hand. If they're not in my hand, then they have to be somewhere. Glasses are not self-existing. They are situational. Now, usually that is an invisible fact. We don't pay any attention to situationality. But we are in this room. Before we were in this room, we were somewhere else. Some people were in the movement, some people were in the forest, some people were lying in the sunshine. People were in different places, and we gather here together for a while, and then we go somewhere else. We are always going somewhere else. We are always located in time and space, location and duration. This is the dimension we inhabit. And therefore, the glasses and the context of being held in my hand or put in my pocket are not two separate things. You cannot have the glasses alone. So that's the relative context. In the morning we looked at the fact that you never have clouds apart from the sky. That's more the absolute integration. But on a very relative level, everything in this room is related to other things in this room. We sit on the cushions. When we finish on Sunday, we stack all the cushions over by the wall. Before we arrived, some kind people took the cushions off there and spread them out on the floor. The cushions have to go somewhere. Our bodies have to go someplace. That's just a fact. We are always someone, somewhere. And this somewhere-ness is our inseparability from the environment. When we think of I, me, myself, it is as if I am an autonomous individual. I'm individual. I cannot be divided in myself. And I am autonomous because I am clearly apart from the environment. I am not the chair. I can get up from the chair is left behind. I am making use of the chair, but the chair is not determining me. Of course, the chair is determining my current posture, or at least influencing it. So, when we say there is an absence of inherent self-nature, this is an investigation to recontextualize yourself. We investigate how we delude ourselves by our fake autonomy, and then we see, oh, I am part of what is going on. I feel, sometimes at least, probably quite intensively, I stand apart. I am inside myself looking out. The world is out there and I am inside. But actually, as we know, we breathe in and out. We need to drink and eat, and we shit and piss. And we are a system which is going on round and round and round. And this is how we are. So, the absence of inherent self-nature means we are relational, not autonomous. And this relationality is dynamic because the environment changes and we change, as we touched on this morning. So there is no governing or defining essence inside myself. If I say, well, I'm just James, James is a name given to me by other people. My mum wasn't called James, my dad wasn't called James. For some reason they called me James. Now I'm James. But the Jamesness of James belonged to them for whatever reason. Oh. So, what seems to define us or capture us, and often it seems that a name is some essential quality about you, because somebody calls out your name and you turn. They seem to have got you. If we remember when Padmasambhava went to Tibet, and he was helping to build a monastery at Samye, and these local deities, the spirits of the mountain and the water and so on, they didn't want this new temple to be built. So they would come and pull the walls down and so on. And by the power of his meditation, he forced these deities to appear in front of him. And on their chest they would carry a big mirror, and in this mirror he forced them to show their seed syllable. And when he caught their seed syllable, that was their defining name, and he inserted that in a mantra. So if you do big tantric rituals, you recite the mantras of the protectors, and by saying that seed syllable, when you're in the visualization of Padmasambhava, you catch them. Names catch people. The police build up databases and exchange information across countries to try to find criminals. Criminals try to change their name. They get many false passports and so on. Some of them even damage their fingers so they can't get stable fingerprints and so on. But increasingly they try to find some marker that will define people. Now DNA is used a lot in police investigations because you want to get the way of catching someone. It was you did it. You cannot deny it, we have the evidence. So in a similar way, when we say James, oh, that's me. It's as if, oh, I can't escape from that because that's me. Here is the name is my essence. But of course this is nonsense. This is a delusion. The name is my habit. It took a long time for me to accept that I was James. When I was a child and I would play in the back garden, my mother would say, James, James, Jimmy, come in, come in. And I would not hear anything. Then she would have to come out. Didn't you hear me calling? No. So, gradually James is seeping deeper and deeper inside me. For children to have to understand that their name is a hook is very upsetting. You can't really hide. So, once we have this essence, it can be grasped. And the grasped essence locates you in a particular form, a form which is different from other forms, and that becomes the basis of the delusion of the separated ego self. I am my body, I am my name, I am my history, I am my identity, I am my database, I am my passport. We have thousands of ways of finding aspects of locatedness. But all of these, from the Buddhist point of view, are constructs developed in time and space through interaction. So, on this idea of dependent co-origination, when it's outlined by Nagarjuna, he says, on the basis of this, that arises. So on the basis of the dynamics between my parents, my elder brother was named after a relative on my father's side, And I was named after a relative on my mother's side. So they balanced that up. So that's dependent co-origination. On the basis of some loyalty to some person who was dead or someone who was much loved, a name is applied. It's nothing to do with the person who's being named. It has to do with the network of loyalties in a family. And so the outside is invested into the inside, and as we looked in the morning, and then appears to be inherent. It appears to be intrinsic. This is the great confusion. The projection is denied as a projection, and then is used as a site of information which appears to be external. So I'm James. But Jamesness was put into me. I'm not inherently a James. I could be somebody else. So, this is what he's saying here. Whatever appears is without any actual reality. Actual reality here means having a truth in itself. It means our truth or our definition is always relational. So there are people in this room who speak many different languages. We have Italian and Russian and so on. These languages each call bananas and apples and so on with different words. So when you learn your mother tongue, you learn in this very absorbent way the deep truth that there is a one-to-one correlation between the word and the object. This is a horse, this is a house, this is a dog. And then you start to learn another language, you start to see, oh, languages are systems of conventional signs. There is no direct correlation at all between the sign, the signifier, and what is signified. It appears to be the case because it is a habit formation which is conventional to the speakers of those languages. That's all. There is no inherent truth in calling an apple because there's only an apple in English. Appleness is a concept. What is this thing? Well, if you stop telling it what it is, it will show you. You can't say. The world is inexpressible as itself. It is expressed through the projection of signs. That is to say, the world is the semiotic web. It's not that we have interpretation after the fact of the object, but objects arise through the naming. So normally we think there are things, and these things are referred to by nouns. So we have different kinds of potato, different kinds of apple. Maybe you like quite a sharp apple. So in English we'd say a Granny Smith's apple. Deep green in color, quite crisp when you bite into it. That apple understanding has no meaning unless I have other apples. Some are sweet, some are quite soft in their texture, some are very hard in their texture. Some have thick skin, some have thin skin. All of these are ideas I have about apples. I am inventing the different kinds of apples through the words. Yeah? So it's not that there is a noun there, an entity, an item which is there, onto which I, as me, am entitled to express my opinion. I like this apple, I don't like that apple, but there are apples. That's our ordinary way of proceeding. This is our relative freedom to have our own opinion, our taste. The Buddhist view is very different. It's much more radical. He says, if you don't identify what is there, you won't find anything there. That is to say, what you will find is light and sound. There's nothing there. When you start to interact with this moving network of light and sound, you thicken the sound. Apple, apple, apple. Like we heard the church bell. Apple, 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 apple. Oh, an apple! So the apple becomes meaningful, if you can recall at all, as a child, or maybe you've been with small children, you see them doing this. They play with the sounds and then they realize, if I say it the right way, other people will give me an apple. But if I say it in my own way, only my mum's going to understand. So children gradually get pushed out of baby language into more conventional usage because they realize it empowers them to get lots of people to do what they want. So this is the conventional nature. It is from the outside to the inside. This is what it means by absence of inherent reality. There are no entities. The meaning or truth or reality of the object is the play of the subject. Now, what this means is the world is always fresh. Every moment is a new beginning in which how the subject constellation arises evokes and constellates the potential of the field of clarity to manifest as particular objects, as particular people. And if you can do this lightly, then your world is a world of light. If you do it in a solid, dogmatic, concretizing way, then you get quite a solid world. But this is our freedom. This is why the mind is chief. How your mind works. If it's full of grasping and hunger, it makes the world heavy. This is more important than that. Therefore I must have this. I don't want to have that. And you see, especially, it's so interesting to be with small children. They get so upset if things go wrong. I didn't want that one. No! No, it's the same. No! Right. Okay. For you, this is really important. Yeah. So what you see there is the raw energy of starting to solidify the world. Because once you start to say to the child, yeah, I know we said we would do that, but we have to do this now. No, we're going out. No, but look, it's very wet now, and your granny's coming. She's coming here, we're not going there. No! Because now I know what we're going to do. So the child is building up a little raft of idea on idea on idea and forming a kind of solid base of being able to predict and to know. And when that gets disrupted, it brings a lot of anxiety. So as adults, we do quite a lot of work to try to maintain the seeming solidity of this base, which is, if I know what things are, I can move them around, and they offer me the basis of predictive clarity. On the basis of knowing how to manipulate objects, I can feel myself to be a strong and powerful operator in this world. Does that seem to make sense? Mm-hmm. Does that link with your experience? So that's what Padmasambhava is pointing to here. If you observe yourself and you start to really look at what you see around you, you see that the meaning is not intrinsic. The meaning is not there before you arrive. You bring the meaning with you and project it into the object. As we've discussed in past meetings, if the people of the village, many of whom are Roman Catholic, come into this building, they're not really very interested in the shrine as being an object of virtue, because this is against the faith. Why would you pray to the Buddha? We've got a Jesus down the road. Why would you bother? Jesus is the right one. You guys are all deluded. That's a belief. We don't have that belief. We say, why would you go to the church? Look what we got. We got shiny. Clearly, these are beliefs. When you have a belief, your light energy makes the object shine. When you don't have that belief, it drains out. So, one of the things that happened in the last 30 years is in Saudi Arabia, the intensity of this Wahhabi aspect of Sunni Islam has led to the religious police destroying many of the ancient monuments in Mecca. All the Sufi shrines have been destroyed, the shrine of the Prophet's mother and so on have been turned into dust. And you can be arrested for going there because you are honoring something which is worshipping a building. The Prophet said, don't have any images that you worship. So for the Sufis, so this is a shrine of the Prophet's mother. If you go to a shrine like that, there is a blessing in the air, it helps you in your practice. And they say, no. So there you see these conflicts of belief leading to absolute destruction. And we've seen this with these battles between Protestants and Catholics in Europe in the past.
You also can see this with nature. Nature is also fading away because the human beings are not so interested anymore in nature. They're more interested in techniques and looking on the smartphones and too.
We don't need to worry about nature because we will invent a future. We're going to travel to Mars and colonize Mars. So this kind of crazy idea is very, very popular. We can dominate and control. We're not at the mercy of the world ecological system. That's not going to determine who we are. We are kick-ass people. We can do it our way. It's a very powerful thing. And that comes from the idea that everything in the world as an entity can be transformed into a commodity, and I can own and direct the commodity. And Padmasambhava was saying, this is completely not true. This is why we say it's a delusion. Because first we have an illusion. An illusion is like a rainbow or a mirage on the road on a hot summer's day, where you see something which is not the case. But when it's an illusion, you get it. Oh, that's not really there. There is no real density in a rainbow. But when you have a delusion, you fall into the illusion and you take it to be a real substantial truth. And that's what we suffer from. So that's what he's meaning. Every appearance that we see is devoid of internal self-definition. And so the essence or the real truth is the non-duality of appearance and emptiness. Emptiness is a complex technical term in Buddhism. It means, in its early formulation, it means exactly just this, the absence of inherent self-nature, where by a process of analysis, as you engage with each phenomena, you can see how it's manifesting in relation to the environment around it. So we're clearly manifesting by breathing in and out. If we stop breathing, we die. So we cannot claim to be separate and autonomous because we're breathing. The building is, of course, not breathing, but it seems to be hard and solid, and we can imagine it continuing through time. But the ceiling is resting on the pillars and the walls, and the pillars and the walls are resting on the foundations, and the foundations are resting on the earth. So the building is not autonomous, it's not separate, it is inseparable from the ground that it's standing on, and it's inseparable from the payment of the community tax, because you have to pay money to the local organization. You have to pay your water bill, your electricity bill, your gas bill. They've just whitewashed the stupa, which is very nice. But they had to do that because of wear and tear, and the water went into some of the cracks and it was starting to open up. So buildings are existing in relation to the climate around them, and repair and maintenance is necessary. When we look around, we see there is nothing in the realm of appearances which is self-existing. Everything arises in dependent co-origination. Everything is relational. But our language denies that. Our education denies that. The ordinary currency of the world denies that. So, for example, if you have a 10 euro note, look, I've got 10 euros. But it's a piece of paper. The value of the 10 euros is entirely relational. That it's a social commodity that people are willing to accept in the shop, that you give them 10 euros and they give you a packet of coffee and some milk and a bottle of Coca-Cola. You get that for your 10 euros. Because it's a part of a system of signs. There is no meaning in the piece of paper with 10 euro on it, except that 10 euros links to the understanding of euros. And the value of the euro in international trade goes up and down. The dollar's a little bit wobbly at the moment, the pound's going up against the dollar. International currencies are always shifting and turning. So 10 euros is affected by inflation, it's affected by the country that you're spending it in, it's affected by many different things. Very often if you go into small country shops, they charge you more than the supermarket in the big town. There's less competition around. So, these values are all relative. And this is not just a statement that you should believe, this is an invitation to investigate for yourself. Whenever you think you found something which is self-existing, look at where it's situated. Does it have a history? Is it being held in place by other factors? How do I identify it? And then you see every appearance is inseparable from your own mind. Not only is it appearance and emptiness, but it's an appearance and the function of your mind. So, again and again, whenever you find yourself taking something seriously as a truly existing phenomena, this is a kind of sleep. This is a kind of absence of clarity, a kind of dullness of the mind, which on a conventional level we need in order to interact with other people. But when we want to see clearly, there's nothing there. It doesn't mean there's nothing there at all. It means there's nothing there inherently by itself. That the appearance is undeniable. It's the appearance of nothing. So in the traditional Tibetan text they say, Kyewa mepa gakpa me. Kyewa mepa means nothing is born. Nothing really comes into existence. Everything is in the womb of the Great Mother. Everything is emptiness. But gakpa me means continuously arising and arising, manifesting, moving, changing. Experience, movement, subject and object never stops. But this is inseparable from being unborn. So when we see, oh, this is a woman, this is a man, and we think that womanness or manness is some inherent quality, we can see, well, this is relational. It stands in relation to the balance of the factors that are manifested at the time they were developing in the womb, the chromosomes and so on. It manifests according to gendered stereotyping prevalent in the culture and so on. In some cultures, man and woman are very, very separate. Now with the movement into transsexual identity, as that gathers momentum in America, then the rigid polarization of male and female starts to be dissolved. And you see that there are multiple gender identities. So you might need to be very hesitant to say, oh, this is a woman. On what basis do you say this is a woman? Perhaps this person doesn't want to be called a woman. So you have no entitlement. That's your idea. Fuck me. This is a bloody woman. Come on. No, 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 no. This is your arrogant idea. Then the ego has to, like a snail drawing in its little horns, the ego, sorry. So now we're walking on eggshells, which is very good. Because if we're not walking on eggshells, as Waldemar was saying, then we walk through the world in our big boots, standing on everything and destroying it. So if we're more tentative and we realize this is a woman according to my template, I have to look and ask before I decide. My conclusion should come at the end of a process, a discourse, a dialogic interaction, and not arise from some presumption in myself. Because it's these presumptions that create the idea of the inherent self-nature. Yeah? And of course, then we start to dissolve the power of knowledge. When I grew up in Scotland in the 1950s, it was very clear to me that the only purpose of Germans was to exist as someone for the British to fight. Because there was war movies everywhere, and there was war comics, and in school we're swapping all of these about fighting here and fighting there. Everything was about the war. It was the kind of trail end of the war. This is what the Germans are. These are people we fight. So, in that way, you grow up with all kinds of expectations about we know who they are. And then you start to travel in the country. So actually, the people are not like that. That each individual has their own unique specificity in this moment, according to these circumstances. So how could you ever generalize about the whole people when it's almost impossible to generalize about one person? Mary is like that. Some of the time. Depends who's with her. So then we have to keep retracting. But now I don't have certainty. I can't just vomit my profound knowledge onto the world so that I feel heroic. I have to be much more tentative. That is to say, I have to be aware. I have to check it out. I have to allow the world to show me how it is before I take permission. I'm taking permission from the world, not out of myself. So, hopefully that gives you the sense. This is the unification of wisdom and compassion. The more wisdom you have, the less you presume that you're entitled to dominate other people and tell them who they are, which makes you softer and kinder, with more empathic attunement and more tenderness in your relatedness. So again and again we have to check out this relation of appearance and emptiness. Then secondly, he says, mind itself has been unborn from the very beginning, and what is there to cease in that which is unborn? Therefore, it has the characteristic of the non-duality of beginning and ending. Okay, so, mind itself has been unborn from the very beginning. To be born, as we know, when you're born you come out of your mother's body, and then the midwife cuts the umbilical cord, or in some cultures bites it with her teeth. So now you and your mother have become separate. Before you were one. You were two, but you were also one. You were a kind of dyad. But now the baby has become separated off and appears to be autonomous. So, to be born is to separate from the source, from the ground, to step apart from the field of emergence. You emerge out of it, like a fish jumping out of the water. But he's saying the mind is unborn from the very beginning. The mind hasn't become a thing. If the first point that he made was that all phenomena are unborn because they're inseparable from emptiness. Now the mind, which identifies all these different phenomena, it also is unborn. So, if you think of yourself, probably you can remember being 5 years of age. You have some felt sense of what that was. Then imagine you're 10. Then you imagine you're 15, 20. At each of these points in life, your body was different, the clothes you wore were slightly different, the kind of things you were interested in were different. Which one of these is your true self? Momentarily, due to causes and circumstances, you appeared in this particular formation. Some people are very confident when they're 5 and shy when they're 10. Others are very shy when they're 5 and more confident when they're 10. Which is the truth about the person? These are situational identities. So actually, when we look at the course of our lives and these various formations we've had, have we ever been born? Or are we always in the process of birthing, becoming? I'm appearing like this for the moment because of these circumstances. But am I born as this? Is this really me? For a while. And then it vanishes. So actually, we are born and dying without leaving the womb of the Great Mother, which is emptiness. All our lives we've been moving in this realm of emptiness, becoming this, becoming that, but without ever becoming anything that was enduring. We haven't arrived anywhere. And when you die, people have to bury you, or burn you, or chop you up and feed you to the pigs. Depends who's killed you. Maybe it's the mafia. So, something has to be done with the body, because the body will start to rot and smell very bad. It keeps going. It's a process. It's not a thing. He's dead. No, somebody, means a bit of him's gone, but look at this stinky thing. What do we do with it? Funerals are quite expensive. It costs a lot in Britain to bury someone. At least £3,000 to put someone in a hole in the ground. It's ridiculous. So what are we going to do with the body? It continues. But it continues becoming something else. If you see someone, if you're with them just as they're dying, you look at the face of this beloved person and you sit with them through the next 24 hours. And then the next 24 hours. And it's April. And it's hot. And the body's ripening. At what stage does my beloved mother become a stinking corpse? Something's happening. Becoming. So this is a real question. Have I ever been born? When I was born, they say James. This is James. So all the way through my childhood, people lied to me and cheated me by saying, you're James. I was so many different people. But all of them are gathered together in this big wrapper called James. As if James has been born, James does this and that and the other. But each of these was, just like a trout just slightly breaking the surface of a pond. It doesn't even leap out, it just whoosh. Becoming this, becoming that. Impermanent. So, we can take this deeper and see the mind is like this. The mind has not been born. The mind means that the stage or the arena or not really a dimension because it's more complex, but the space within which you have the unfolding of your experience. The experience that seems to be external because it arises for us through our sense organs. The experience which seems to be internal, proprioception in the body, memories, thoughts, and so on. These are all evanescent. They arise and pass. And the mind itself, is it a pot? So, I have a glass. Inside the glass is water. The water is not as stable as the glass. To get rid of the water is quite easy. You can throw it away or drink it. But a glass is more difficult. Now we got something here. A glass. You can put orange juice in it, petrol, sperm, whatever you want. Put many different things in a glass. Because there's a glass. So, is the mind like a glass? Is the mind a container? I need to keep this in my mind. I must remember too. It's as if the mind is some big filing system, some commodious receptacle that will allow you to store a lot of information. But is your mind really like that? We feel overwhelmed. Too much. I can't take any more. As if the mind had a limited capacity. Is this true? Probably not. Certainly not from a Dharma point of view, because it would say what you are describing is the impression which you carry of your mind. I can't take any more. Means I don't want to take any more, but probably you can. I can't take any more, but if somebody is coming behind me with a gun, I can certainly walk another 10 miles. So, due to this frame of reference, I'm at my limit. But if the frame of reference shifts, a little more is possible. I've had enough to eat, but if that pudding is going to arrive here, and it smells delicious, then probably a small bowl, which is quite big, is possible. So the limit of myself is not fixed. So what is it then? If the mind is expanding and contracting, is that then like the stomach? What is the mind? So, inviting us to look from the Buddhist point of view, the mind is not born. So, some of you are very familiar with these famous 5 questions. Does the mind have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it come from somewhere? Does it stay somewhere? Does it go somewhere? This is exactly on this point. Because all the phenomena in the world seem to have this location and duration. But the mind itself, where is it located? When you look for your mind, you can say, oh, my mind is inside my body. What does that mean? I mean, you're repeating something somebody's told you. My mind is in my brain. You read that in a book. You saw it on the telly. How do you know? Well, because it was in a book. But lots of things in books are not true. Look for your mind. When we start to look, what do we find? I find thoughts. I find memories. I find sensation. I find the content of my mind. The content is showing itself, but it shows itself as impermanent. What can I grasp in the content of the mind? Nothing. But the mind itself, does it show itself? No. So, this is exactly why we have this image of the mirror and the reflection. You never see the mirror itself. The mirror shows itself as a reflection. The mind is not a thing. It is an awareness which has no size or color, no defining characteristics, and yet is always here. So in Tibetan they say Rigpa Tongsal. Rigpa means awareness, Tong means emptiness, Sal means clear. The mind is clear, that is to say, everything arises at once. You see in this room, moment by moment by moment, everything is arising. This is called Hlundru. This is, everything is here. And this Hlundru is like the breath of Kada, of the primordial purity. The unborn mind is ceaselessly showing evanescent content which is ungraspable. So we have the ungraspable mind and the ungraspable content, and it's here. And this is what we have. So we have colors and shapes and sounds with which arise the movement of the mind that says there's a car. I can hear the car coming in. How do I know this? Because that's the sound that the car pressure through the wheel makes on the gravel. I am imputing carness to the sound. I am making a speculation. This is what our mind does. That's how we build up pictures, imaginations, ideas about the world. This is the movement of the energy of the mind creating experience. And experience, like clouds in the sky, never leaves the mind. I experience that there is a car coming into the grounds behind me. I experience that. That's not me thinking about an object. That's the experience arising altogether. So the first point he's making is there are no self-existing objects. We say car, we make car by saying car. If somebody in this village is very depressed, they go into the garage with their car and a piece of rubber tubing. And they put the rubber tubing over the exhaust pipe and they sit in the car, play some music, drink a bit of Jack Daniels, and they vanish. So the car is a death machine. It's certainly a death machine for insects in the summer and for unlucky pedestrians on Friday night. So what is a car? Huh? A car for a mechanic in the garage is money, because you don't know anything about car except you own one. And the mechanic can say, I would be very concerned about this. You say, really? Yes, the carburetor, very important. How would you know? So, a car is a site of lying and cheating and deception. What is a car? Nothing there. Everything is there. Whatever you want is there. This is the potential of the world. This is what it means salwa in Tibetan. Salwa means clarity. It means the arising of the potential which is open to multiple formations. If things were truly themselves, just one thing, everybody would agree to what it was and what its value was. But clearly we don't live in a world like that. People have their own relationship with the potential of the world and they bring it out according to their particular situation. The sun is shining, which is great news for us. But if you are an albino and you have highly sensitive skin and your eyes are very light sensitive, it's not such a good thing. Winter and grey days are much easier for you. It's all situational. But when we sit inside our own complacency, our own belief that I am normal, start with me because I'm the one that's okay. You're not so like me. I'm a bit worried about you. Me, normal. Everyone else, weird. That's how we proceed. So, saying, actually, nothing is normal. Normal, as we know, comes from norm. It's like a statistical norm. It is an abstraction. It is a concept. In terms of the phenomenology, you cannot have normality, because the phenomenological field is so complex and multivariable, multifactorial, that it's shifting moment by moment. This is the freshness of the Buddha's breath. You have to be here to be here. If you're here and not dreaming about being here, not interpreting being here, if you're just here, Everything is open. Everything is possible. And that's our freedom. But if you start with a rigid projection and interpretation, the possibilities become increasingly limited. So, in this second point, mind itself has been unborn from the very beginning. And what is there to cease in that which is unborn? It means rigpa, awareness in the mind. Here mind means semni, the actuality of the mind, not the content of the mind, but the sphere or the openness within which mental phenomena arise. How could that ever come to an end? If something has no beginning, it can't come to an end. Beginning and end, these are two polarities, they link together, but it's never been born, so how is it going to die? This is to say your consciousness of the day of the week, or whether you're hungry or whether you need a pee, your consciousness arises due to specific factors. You drank a lot at lunchtime and now you need to pee. That has a particular beginning, middle and end. It wasn't the case that you needed to pee. Now you feel more sensation in the bladder, so you have to go and pee. So that's going from something which wasn't there to is here, then you have a pee and you don't need to pee anymore because you had a pee. So the content of the mind and the way in which we understand what is arising, our dualistic consciousness, manifests due to causes and circumstances. It is not self-existing. No? But the mind itself is unborn. So most of what we take to be my mind is the transient content of the mind and not the mind itself. And because we can look at the content of our mind in the same way we look at entities outside, this is a camera, this is a pillar, this is the ceiling, I am happy, I'm a bit tired. We're using the same grammatical structure. A subject talking about an object, a subject describing something. This is the ceiling, I am tired. It seemed to be referring to some defining characteristic, and yet I am tired arises and vanishes. And then something else happens and I don't feel so tired. So the content of the mind includes consciousness. What you take to be me thinking about the world, me thinking about me, all of this is not the mind. So we have to be very careful in these texts that we understand what the mind is. The mind is not me thinking, oh, we need to have a tea break soon. That's a thought. I have to be mindful of something. That is to say, I need to join some signifiers together to make a pattern so that there will be a remembrance of an activity which needs to be performed. That's transient content. And no content can stay in the mind for more than a few seconds. Observe that for yourself. Nothing stays in the mind. All experience is changing. Even this room, if you just sit with your eyes open, not in the meditation, but just looking at the room, is moving. Not only are people moving, but your sense of what's there, because your attention is suddenly caught by the light shimmering on the gold paint, and then then the blue, and that, like some pinball machine. We're moving around inside, responding to these various stimuli. It's never stable. This is called movement. There's stillness and movement. Stillness is awareness inseparable from the openness of emptiness, the dharma dhatu. Movement is everything else. Everything else. Thoughts, feelings, mountains, seas, rivers, football matches, everything is in movement. Nothing to hold on to. So understanding that the mind has never been born and will never end, therefore it has the characteristic of the non-duality of beginning and ending. here's two polarities. There's beginning and ending. And they exist as back-to-back. They are oppositional. If it's the beginning, it's not the end. If it's the end, it's not the beginning. But the mind, because it has never been born, has no ending. And so the seeming opposition between beginning and ending is dissolved, or its intrinsic integrity as non-duality is revealed. Nothing has ever come out of the womb of Prajnaparamita. Yum Chenmo, the great mother, is emptiness herself, and this womb is the entirety of the universe. So the non-duality of beginning and ending is you can't set one against the other. When you split beginning and ending, you have a polarity. And as ignorance starts to manifest in the mind, one of the first things which is installed is polarities. In Sanskrit, these are called prapancha. In Tibetan, tröpa. And they have, one of the famous ones is beginning and ending. So there are 8 main polarities, but all polarities belong in them. So there's good, bad, me, you, right, wrong, summer, winter, whatever you imagine existing as polarities. All of these are the dualistic pulsation which is generating the sphere of samsara. Samsara arises due to the operation of polarities. Because polarities work on the basis of the law of exclusion. I am a man. Why are you a man? Because I'm not a woman. Tell me about being a man. I wouldn't know what to say. But I do know I'm not a woman. Here's a banana, here is an orange. Tell me about bananas. I don't know anything about bananas, but I will tell you it's not an orange. That is the law of exclusion. This is this because it's not that. And if you observe yourself, this is what you use to organize the world. This is the structural foundation of the world. One of the great tragedies in modern European thought has been the very brief period of structuralism as being a driving force. The structuralism that was around in French intellectual life in the 1960s was an immensely helpful theoretical mode of inspection, but it got knocked out with post-structuralism and all these wanky modern things. Because structuralism really sees binary opposition. Binary opposition is the movement of modern mathematics. It's how computers operate. Things are on or off, on, off, on, off. And if it's on, it's not off. If it's off, it's not on. That is the dynamic of these huge elaborated structures that will determine our life. Artificial intelligence is exactly grounded in that tension of polarities. What he's saying is there are no polarities. Polarities are conceptual interpretation. And when you think in a particular way, it will manifest through the clarity of the mind as the phantom tormentors of your dream life. We create the world we live in. So having invented robots, and people who have money being able to make more money out of selling robots and selling them to factories where they can get rid of 100 workers and have 3 robots, a lot of people are going to be very poor because of robots. And a lot of people are going to be very rich because of robots. And do we have a national meeting to all sit together in a huge circle and discuss the pros and cons of the development of electronic technology? Nah. No, we don't. Because we are victims. We don't have a voice. We're hardly citizens. It's going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen. On the horizon, the transformation of industrial production. Are we smart? Are we intelligent? Nah. We're very good at self-destruction. We're very good at making new weapons, tactical nuclear devices developed big time in America. We are very good at diminishing people by blowing their arms and legs off, by gassing them and so on. So we don't have much common humanity. So what he's saying here is, if you understand that the mind is devoid of polarity, again, here you have wisdom and compassion. Because if there are no polarities, how can you say, this is my friend, this is my enemy? How can we say, my country is more important than yours? How can we say, straight people are better than gay people? All the prejudicial statements that come in the world, all are grounded in polarized thinking, in binary opposition, in the law of exclusion. So this is very, very profound. Because if nothing is polarized, everything is integrated. And if everything's integrated, it is a whole. And if it's a whole, it's Dzogchen, it's the great completion. So you can see the direction he's going in. So then we have to look to ourselves. How much do I rely on polarization to make sense of what's going on in the world? And do I believe that they're really true? Because I may feel I'm the master of the game and I'm just using these conventional ways of talking. But actually, they're quite powerful. They suck people in. So, politically, there are many countries in Europe now that are getting very wary of foreigners. An idea of national purity. And then from national purity, it's not far to go to blood purity. And when you go to blood purity, then impurity is very dangerous. It is contamination, miscegenation, mixing the pure bloodline of our people. Let's at least have a fence. If we can't have a fence, then we need to do something drastic. So fences are going up all the way through Israel, going up in Hungary, keeping the other out. All of this is polarized thinking. We are good, they are bad. Why should we share with them? Who are they? Well, the one thing we know about them, we don't need to know anything about them, but the one thing we do know about them is they're not us. And we're the good guys. So you can see from the micro development of the individual identity to all the nastiness that's enacted in the world, this is the key point. If we don't see the infinite embrace of emptiness, the fact that everything is insubstantial, then it's very easy to say, this person is really my enemy. But if this person is form and emptiness, appearance and emptiness, where is the essence that is my real enemy? So this is very, very profound. And we take it into the meditation when we observe how we enter into judgment in our own minds. And we see that tendency and we observe, when I get into judgment in meditation, I lose spaciousness. I become small and limited. And when I'm small and limited, for sure I'm going to be bigoted. So we relax and open. We relax and open. We don't accept and reject. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever comes, comes. No border guards. Arising and passing. So this is wisdom and compassion here. And now we need a tea break.